Oh, no!
Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level, brought to you today by PartySlate, our title sponsor, the first website designed specifically for event professionals and venues. Definitely check them out at partyslate.com. And this is the show in which I have a guest co-host, and together we talk about the interview of the week and pick out a few key topics and talk about them such that you can raise your own business to the next level. And I first want to mention that if you missed last week's, you really got to listen to it. It was with the photographer out of Paris, Greg Fink. Greg is a wonderful photographer with just a really fascinating and unique story about how he got to the top really quickly. And my guest co-host was the renowned planner and designer, Lori Aarons, who I know everyone knows. And we had a great talk about Greg's interview. So be sure to check out the interviews from last week. And I want to now introduce you to today's guest host, and that is Sean Lowe. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Always great to be back.
Yes. And for those who may not know, if that's possible, Sean's consulting firm, The Business of Being Creative, is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Sean has a wonderful client list, which includes the who's who of the wedding industry and design community. And I interviewed Sean last year, February of 2018. And I'm going to put a link basically in the show notes so you can get to that. And then in a couple months, we're going to be recording a part B. So I'm excited to have you on again, Sean.
Well, thank you. I can't wait.
Yeah, and the interview that we are going to talk about today is from Monday, and that was Vanessa KRECKEL of Two Paper Dolls. And Vanessa and I talked all about the art of branding, logo development, website design and development, invitation design, the use of social media, and essentially developing a brand voice that sets you apart. And so Sean and I are going to break that down in a minute. Sean, though, I want to say right from the beginning of the interview, when I was getting the backstory on Vanessa, I really enjoyed how she talked about the risks that she took and how she had the mindset of really going out on a limb and figuring it out later. Wasn't that great?
Oh, I think it's awesome. I mean, I think it takes a particular kind of personality to, as you say on the podcast, to just, jump off the cliff and know that the net will appear. It's one of those, that's a conviction that it will all be okay. And not everybody is that way, and not everybody has to start that way, and not everybody has to kind of be that much of a risk taker. But when you have someone like a Vanessa, it's what changes things, right? It gives you permission to just try, right? And what I love about that, and Vanessa would be the first to tell you, as she hints at, is that sometimes it's not going to work out, right? And that willingness, which I think is the biggest lesson that she's really talking about, is to learn the lesson. And what that means to me is that you're willing to fail. You're willing to say, yeah, that didn't work. Let's do something different, right? And that's a great spirit, right? Especially when you're trying to move and adapt and become something new for everybody.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of podcasts also outside of the event industry, and especially with a lot of entrepreneurs, and all the successful ones talk about that, about, it's really not just the cliche, be willing to fail. I mean, they really get it. And I remember, I think it was the interview with Tim Chi, the CEO of the Knot Worldwide, which, by the way, was a great interview. If you all missed it, go back and look up Tim Chi, CHI, because he spoke a lot about how he would do a trial, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, and he would learn so much from it. And we all know how successful he is. It sure worked for him. And so, yeah, what you're saying, what Vanessa said, really, really resonates. And I remember one of her examples was how when it was toward the beginning, she had a smaller team, and she decided they wanted to produce their own work, not just design, but they had no knowledge of how to do that. And she just went out, I think, eBay or something, or Craigslist, whatever it was, and bought 2 used letter presses and had to figure out how to use it, and then eventually grew to 13 different machines, designing and producing her own work. So yeah, hats off to Vanessa for doing that.
Absolutely. And if you ask her, it's not actually that straight line. It's a visual of it's a bunch of squiggly lines,
right,
that ultimately get her to 13, right? So, and that's what's a beautiful thing of what she's talking about. That's the fearlessness of an entrepreneur. But you also have to have the mettle in order to do that, right? And know that you can take the risk, not just to start, But I think what is a bigger thing that is there is the willingness, and that's what Tim was talking about, and that's what you're talking about, is the willingness to pivot and keep going, right? It's not just it's the idea that you're going to constantly fall down, but you can constantly get back up.
Yes. And look, you know me really well. I mean, I've been through so much between the music business, the podcast business, balancing everything, all these ideas that I'm endlessly having in both businesses. And, sometimes I have a hard time with that. But overall, I agree that you got to just have the resolve that you're not going to make it all the time. But if you keep going for it, you're going to make things work. It's part of the process. And,
yes.
And Tate Larson from Style Me Pretty talked about that a lot too. That was another great interview where you can hear a lot about it. So we also talked quite a bit about developing a brand and really what Vanessa said was learning what makes a client tick of hers and what makes them different and working on developing a voice that sets them apart. And I asked her, well, what would you say is the first step? And let's talk about the different elements of what makes up a brand. And I loved how she started by saying, well, first thing is to define who your client is and who you are and what you believe and where you want to be in 5 and 10 years. And most people really have a hard time doing that. And so to sit down and take a deep dive into it, talk about it, get your team together, flush that out is really key.
Yeah, well, it's not a secret. I've worked with Vanessa for a long time. And one of the things I want to say that is really, really gratifying is that obviously I'm the business side of things, right? So I'm not doing the creative work that she does. It's just so well. But what's so empowering to hear her talk is that she's, I know that she is a brilliant brand strategist, but I don't, the word and the whole concept has been so overused that I don't really want to call her that. What I want her to call her that is like, she's a culture specialist, right? She understands that it's all about alignment, and she understands that it's about telling the story to people that care, right? So making sure that there's a perspective on who you want to share, what you want to share with them, so that they can be moved, right? And so feeling that from her doing it as she does it as an artist is just so gratifying, because what she's saying, if you really listen, is that the art that I create for you is not going to be for everybody. It's going to be for the people that care about you. And so she doesn't do generic brands. She doesn't do, it's going to be something for everybody. She doesn't do Starbucks. That's not what Vanessa does. And that's what's so remarkable what she's saying. It's like, your story is not for everybody, but for the people who it's for, it's the most powerful story in the world, right? And that is what she's really built her entire business on. And I loved it.
Many of our past guests, including Brian Raffinelli, Cece Johnson, Colin Cowie, and Lynn Easton, all use PartySlate to showcase their event work and build their businesses. And if you're not familiar with PartySlate, it's a website that inspires people planning events and connects them with the leading event professionals and venues across the country and the world. This is a really, really great website. You can sign up for a free profile where you can upload unlimited photos and events, or you can explore one of their membership options for even more exposure. And PartySlate has launched in 11 cities so far, including Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, and Miami. And they are coming to a city near you soon. Visit PartySlate.com to learn more. Again, you really got to check out PartySlate.com. We've worked together for a long time, and you talk a lot about that. It's not for everybody. And that comes down to that big question and big topic that I've also heard in an enormous amount of podcasts, is being able to say no. And it's not just simply someone who just isn't likable or something like that, but are they the right client? And it is scary. I've been through this where it's very scary to think of it that way. But in the end, I mean, if we don't have the clients that really understand and appreciate, what we do, our brand, and connect with us in that way, then it's just going to be a losing battle, all along the way.
And what I love, if you really have to hear what she's saying, because she says it really fast, is that she does a lot of work in our industry for people that many would consider direct competitors. So she's doing the work of somebody right next door, right, would be presumably there'd be just tremendous overlap in everything. And yet she is doing the work for both of them, right? So what she is really saying is that it's about your story, and I can help you tell your story, even if it's going to be told to the same person. And what I want to say about that is that most likely someone, and I'm going to mutilate the words, I'm sorry, but someone who likes a Chanel bag is probably going to like an Hermès bag, right? And can see the value of both of them. And so doing what she's saying is she gets to work with both Chanel and Hermès, which is totally fine, right? Because it's about the different stories that they tell and knowing that that's enough. So I love that about it. And I love that about that for her business.
And taking it further, she talks about developing a voice, a consistent brand voice, a message. And she also brought this up, which I thought was cool, that not only the owner of the company, but every person on the team, that everyone speaks this consistent message, that they're speaking the same language, and how that gets more trust from people who are engaging with your brand, and to really examine, what is the story, what is relevant to the brand. And again, with everyone on the team, that everyone is talking about it. And I threw in, even starting with whoever answers the phone at the office, even if it's just a receptionist, even that person should be part of the conversation, so that the client, the potential client, and people in the industry who can refer us are getting the same consistent message and experience.
Yeah, well, what I want from her is like, look, I get the brand, and that's her business, but I don't see it as brand. What I see it as is culture, right? And so what she's saying is that culture drives story, not the other way around, right? And that is so powerful. I mean, if anyone listening can take that and just live that truth, man, and then there's support for her, and I know you're going to have him on in the coming months. Bill Baker is brilliant about storytelling. There's tons of people out there that are really wonderful at doing that, and I know that you've had several of you have Meryl that's good about that too, and so, but it really is culture driving story, right? Not story driving culture. And I think that making sure that you understand the difference between that is just such a huge deal. And Vanessa lives it, right? Which is that we all live our culture, and that generates wonderful story, right? And so that's what she's getting down to. She's not getting down to that, tell me a good one, and then we can all forget it about the next day. No, she's getting to bone. And that part is just phenomenal about how valuable that piece is. And she says it over and over and over again, and she's not wrong, is that she's about getting to the bone of what your culture is and who is it for and what's it for. And from there, as she says, she has a bunch of copywriters and a lot of that manifestation of it. But the story is manifested from culture. And I love that from her.
Yeah. And taking that and talking about culture, she also talked about building a company culture, within your own company, which is critical. And again, Tim Chi talks about that. Tate Larson talked about it. It's really critical. And she was explaining, like, for example, her company, Two Paper Dolls, she's created an atmosphere that is, everyone works hard, but there's also a laid back vibe. Everyone's really having a good time. She encourages and builds in a lot of balance. Like, sometimes people are leaving at 2 and it's fine. Sometimes they're staying till 10 p.m., and also especially that she allows everyone in the company to have a voice. So it wasn't like we spoke about earlier, where it's strictly limited to discussing what the brand message of the company is with everyone in the company. There's also her own company culture. And I loved how she said she even includes them in decision making and brainstorming, all of them, and which also then gets her a lot of buy-in. It's collaborative.
Well, because they're invested. And look, then you have some others that you've had on the show that are wonderful at this too. Like Sidney Novotny is amazing at this. Even Simon Bailey is amazing at this. That what it is about getting people, because he comes from Disney, right? The ultimate culture play, right? So does Cindy, right? So she never worked for Disney, but she certainly consulted a ton with them. And so they appreciate and understand that you're only as strong as the voice. And I love your example of the receptionist, Andy. That was amazing, right? Because you are only as strong as the weakest voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's the first touch point is who picks up the phone or answers the initial email. And, before we go, Sean, I also want to talk about, a lot of times, or sometimes I ask people how they define success. I really love to hear that and end on it. And I did this with Vanessa, and we don't normally talk about it on the next level, but I loved how she said it. It took her aback. I mean, she didn't expect a question like that, but oh my God, was she eloquent. She basically said, I'm paraphrasing, that Success is a combination of winning small battles of challenges and growing together in the same direction. And although, again, profitability is important, but so is happiness in the company culture. But I want to come back to that first phrase. Success for her is also a combination of winning small battles of challenges and growing together. I love that.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's about being what I hear when she says that, and knowing Vanessa as I do, it's about being present to what things are. It's about being present to...
Not easy.
And it's not easy. And it's not easy when a lot of things are flying at you at 1,000 miles an hour, that you can just focus on the one thing, right? And the one thing gets you there, and the next thing gets you there. And living in that place where you can say that you made a difference today, right? And that is enough for her, because she's doing obviously great. She has 26 people working for her. She's building a major business, and that's wonderful. You don't have to, it doesn't take you a long time to do the math that she's running a very big dollar business. But on the other hand, she's lost money, made money. And so she definitely has that perspective that it's not about the ultimate dollar, right? It's about that place of joy and happiness and creativity and being nourished by the work. Right? I think what she's really come to, and what he's just said about the metric of success, which I love, is that she's nourished by the work. Yes. And she wants everybody in her office to be nourished by the work, by saying, wow, what a great opportunity, let's go for it. And to come together and say, is this an opportunity we want to take on? Right? Should we try this? And to be nourished by it, right? And to not be sacrificed by it. So many people in business today are sacrificed by it, that they did great thing, but there's nothing left of them by the time they're done. And that's not what she's talking about. She's saying that's not worth it, right? What she's saying it's worth it is to get the opportunity to do great work and to do great work. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then get the opportunity to do it again.
Yep. Right.
To be nourished and stronger after you're done, so that you can do it again.
That's right. Yeah. Very, very well said. Well, that is all we have time for today. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you, Sean, for being on the show again, helping me out. Thank you.
You are welcome.
And everyone, be sure to check out Sean's website. It is thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. Again, thebusinessofbeingcreative.com. You can follow him on social media. Sean, is it Sean Lowe in the numeral 1? I believe that's it.
I think so. On Twitter and Instagram.
You're so funny. Way. You think so.
I think so.
My God. I'm
not that good about it. I'm sorry.
Well, listen, neither am I. But your website and your blog, that alone is worth going to. And that, and I also want to remind people of the website of Vanessa KRECKEL's company, and it is twopaperdolls.com. Again, twopaperdolls.com. Her social media handles on Instagram is TPD Design House, TPD Design House, and on Facebook it's Two Paper Dolls. And be sure to check out the website, our website, theweddingbiz.com, so you can subscribe and to the show, which of course is free. And be sure to share this with anyone you feel can benefit from this conversation. Really appreciate that. And I want to mention that next week's episode is going to be with Audrey Netakoulis, photographer out of Paris. Audrey's style is really stunning and emotional and very recognizable. You know that it's her when you see it. We talk a lot about her absolute brilliant use of social media, especially Instagram, and how she built an incredible following and business. So be sure to check in next week to hear about Audrey's story. And lastly, we want to thank our sponsor. So happy to have them involved with us, PartySlate. Check them out at PartySlate.com. And we'll catch you all next week on The Wedding Biz.